Hello and welcome to Ancient History Encyclopedia. My name is Kelly and today I am joined with two very special guests. I have Joshua J. Mark, who is a writer and editor at Ancient History Encyclopedia, and Daniel Voshart, who is a cinematographer and a virtual reality designer. Daniel has reconstructed the faces of 54 Roman emperors, and today we're going to have a chat to him about everything that included. Don't forget, if you enjoy this video, chuck it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new videos. So Daniel, why did you do this? Why did you decide to reconstruct every head?
Well, let's see. The main reason was that I was unemployed. So I worked on a show called Star Trek, and I was working on, I was about to start into the following season when all the production got paused. And so I was, just had a lot of free time. And when I have free time, I'm usually just learning software. I was testing a software called ArtBreeder and how I might be able to use it for forensic facial reconstructions, which sounds fancy, but is actually not too terribly scientific. It's when you get like a skull and you try to apply like a face to it. So I was doing tests on clay sculptures and seeing whether or not I could convert that. I released an article on that, and then I moved on to Roman emperors as I got a new start date, and I had about what was it? I think 6 weeks of free time.
Awesome.
And yeah.
So why did you choose Roman emperors? Out of everything you could have chosen in the world to reconstruct, why this group of people?
I think there's just so much research around it already. I mean, there's like a wealth of knowledge. In a sense, a lot of the research was done for me. So like I was able to find like a handful of resources that had most of the information about like hair, skin tone. In most cases, there was none, but where there was information, it was compiled together. And yeah, there's just like a lot of photos online. There's a lot of interest, and yeah, it just seemed like a good topic. There's also a large subreddit community called Colorized Statues, which had been like toying with this and submitting different things. And there would be maybe like one post a week, and I just figured I'll just do a whole slew of them.
Awesome. That's so cool. And I was reading, because you've got your website up and you've got an article and you've talked a lot about your process and what you've done. And I saw you came in with pretty much no idea about any of these people before you came in. Did any of them sort of surprise you when you made this head? Did you go, oh, I wasn't expecting him to look like that, or anything like that?
For sure. I mean, I'd say like there's sort of two that were really surprising. I guess Maximinus Thrax, there's a lot of lore, maybe exaggeration around him and his height. I think it was like 8 feet tall, and it could crush stones with his hands. And then I think the other more interesting one was, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Elagabalus. He's the emperor who, in I guess the early part of their life, identified male, or was definitely depicted as male, and then like it seemed like maybe in the year or two before they were killed, and also they were extremely young. I identified as a woman, and there's a lot of very contentious stories about visiting the brothel and dressing in women's clothes, and just I mean, parts of history that you don't learn in the like half course of civics that everyone's forced to learn.
Well, Josh, as someone who knows a lot about the Roman emperors and Rome history, did any of them surprise you, or do some of them look exactly what you would expect from seeing the busts?
I would say exactly. I mean, there are a number of them. It was just absolutely fantastic, Daniel. Seriously, Augustus Caesar, for example, just to go with one. We have letters from from Mark Antony to Augustus, where essentially the overriding theme is, man, would you just lighten up? You got to like calm down. You're gonna have an aneurysm, and your reconfiguration of Augustus is just exactly that thing. But I would say probably my favorite, and it's interesting that you mention him, is Maximinus Thrax, because he was a Germanic. He was one of the barracks emperors, so called, of the crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284 CE, and the way that you've the way you rendered his facial expression is this wonderful look of surprise, and I always felt that with Maximinus, where it's like, really, I'm the emperor now? That's amazing. I absolutely love Maximinus. Your image of Maximinus Thrax is just like one of my favorites. But also Caligula, who always gets a bad rap in Roman history. And one of the most famous stories of him is that he made a horse a member of the Senate. All right. Well, the way you have his facial expression, his whole vibe, the way that you presented him, is exactly that kind of, I don't know what would I say, smart aleck, I suppose. Because I don't believe that Caligula actually was insane when he made his horse a member of the Senate. I think it was like, you guys are so useless, my horse could do a better job than you. And so here you go. And his expression, the way you rendered his expression is just perfect with that. It's just fantastic.
Thanks. I mean, Caligula actually went through a few changes. So I never know if you're referring to version 1 Caligula or version 3. But he sort of progressively went from sort of what I was aiming for, sort of this like 1,000-yard stare, but also people kept telling me he was attractive, and other people were telling me no, he's supposed to be disfigured. So after being shown, I think like 4 busts made contemporary, where they all had the same. I think it was his right eye lower than his left eye. I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't just politicians saying he was disfigured. Maybe this is an actual thing. So the later depiction, he's actually got this sort of asymmetrical face, and in one of them, like a bit of a stink eye.
It's
still trying to.
I was gonna say, it's interesting that you say that, because you've written in one of your little in your article that there was a chance that you thought that the Roman emperors were depicting themselves more heroic than they actually were during their lives. For example, Cleopatra, the 7th, people are now thinking that she's this beautiful figure, whereas we look at busts and coins and she doesn't look as what we would say is stereotypically beautiful. Is that the same kind of thing now that you've seen with this droopy eye? Maybe they're not showing themselves as heroic and handsome?
I think it really depends on the artistry, and maybe like how far away the artist lives from the emperor. Like what are the chances of me being murdered? But this is me just sort of speculating a lot, because I think I was reading a historian about Caesar, because I'm working on a Caesar depiction, and they seem to have like a pretty good idea of like where the bust was made, and and speculating whether or not they actually had access to the emperors themselves. So, I mean, I wonder how much of it is like banana phone. Like, is it a drawing that gets passed to a sculptor? Does the sculptor get like 2 hours with the emperor? Like, these questions are sort of open questions to me. I have no idea. But
no, you're absolutely right about that. Right? Yes, exactly. I mean, a lot of these things came from this document called the Historia Augusta, which is the history of the Roman emperors, and it's largely considered now to be fictional. People thought, well, this guy was a nice guy, this guy was not a nice guy, written long after they were done. But people then would sculpt images based upon the narrative. So you're absolutely right with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think like there's a degree of uncertainty, just because it's like we know the coins for sure because it's written on the coins with the name, but like I don't know how many of the busts were inscribed. I saw it a few times in the description of the image. Maybe it was on Wikimedia Wikimedia Commons. It said like this bust is inscribed. I don't know if that was like, maybe it was inscribed a few hundred years later, or was it inscribed when it came out of the ground and quickly we need to say it's Caesar right now because it's going to be worth
Put a name on it.
But yeah, some of them were like Vitellius. There was like pseudo Vitellius, like very like the one in the Louvre. I mean, there's a lot of gray area, and I think like where some historians have been, a little bit angry at me is that I've sort of added a little bit too much certainty into these uncertain busts. But on my website, I try to be very clear about, this person, we did know his hair color or we didn't know his hair color. We did know where they were born or we don't know. So I was trying to be clear about what I did and didn't know.
And overall, it's impossible to make everybody happy, no matter how much evidence you've got. Someone is going to be unhappy with some facet of some part of a project, no matter what, I'm sure.
No, I think what's brilliant about your project and what's brilliant about your images, it's exactly what Kelly is saying. Like, someone is always going to have a problem with some artistic rendering. But what impressed me the most was the expressions. I mean, when you look at Caligula, he looks like someone who's going to say, you know what, I want to make my horse a senator. And Augustus, he is renowned in all of the ancient documents, especially with letters to him from Mark Antony. A guy who could not take a joke. He could not take a joke, like not in any way. And the way that you have rendered him is like, you look at that face, like, yeah, that's a guy that could not take a joke. Yep.
And I think some of that has to do with just I was like, whenever like bags started to appear under their eye, I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep that. Or if their expression became extra stern. And I was also aiming to have because there's quite a few in a row, to make sure that their expression changed from one to the next, or have like some sort of differentiation. Because someone told me that the emperors were always trying to sort of compare themselves to agree to the previous emperor, so that as the reigns changed, they'd be like, there's a degree of familiarity, and it sort of explains I think one emperor had a beard, the next emperor, I want an even bigger beard or an even larger beard. And so there was sort of these themes. And what I especially paid attention to in the second version was to make sure that whatever changes I could have, to have those from one image to the next.
Pretty cool. Did you have any instances where you had like a couple of different busts, or you had a bust and some written evidence that just didn't match up? Like, you tried to put them together and it just didn't seem to work?
I can't recall it off the top of my head, but there were definitely several busts where it was very uncertain. I think it was Aurelian. Aurelian was very difficult, because I think it was like there was this like bronze bust of Claudius Gothicus, which, and like so many of these emperor or like images would lose their sourcing. Someone would post it to Pinterest, and then Pinterest is just sort of this echo chamber of poor citations.
Oh, definitely, without a doubt. It's really interesting that you should bring up Aurelian and the problem that you had with him, because I actually thought Aurelian was one of your best things, and also his wife, Opina Serena, which almost nobody ever addresses. But she is thought to be the only woman that ruled over the Roman Empire. I mean, Aurelian draws the empire back from the split of the three empires of the Palmyrene Empire and the Gallic Empire. And then Opina Severina is the woman who keeps it going after he's dead. But I always thought, and this is entirely my own personal thing, that Aurelian is absolutely one of the most impressive of the emperors of the crisis of the 3rd century. And the way you rendered him, I thought just really reflects the kind of character that I always thought he had. So hey, bravo on that.
That's really interesting. I mean, so Ilpia was very much speculative. Of course, there's only coin portraits.
Right.
And so as a starting point, I actually used Aurelian and gender shifted Aurelian as sort of the basis point, just under like, I don't know, a very non-scientific, people are, find partners that look like themselves. I figured I might as well take that to the extreme. But
fantastic.
But I also put a lot of attention on him and her just because to me they were the more obscure emperors. It actually would depend which week I visited the Wikipedia page of list of Roman emperors of whether or not she was scrubbed or not.
Right.
Right now, I think if you go to like the Spanish version of list of Roman emperors, not there. You can go through the edits and you can see people arguing. Yes, she was. No, she wasn't. And I was like, no, she definitely has to be in there.
Very worked up over her. Very, very worked up. Yes.
And in making this, I assumed I would land into obscurity. And so I was like, well, if anything, someone is going to look up her name. What does she look like? And they'll have to land on my depiction because no one else is like, no one else has tried.
Brilliant.
That was like, yeah. But it was also like a bit daunting because I was like, it's got to match a certain grid. It has to be, it's got to be 54. Like, oh gosh, what have I done? And like pretty much all the projects that I do, I sort of go through this stage of like it's really enjoyable, still enjoyable, and then like the last bit is grueling. And so if I never reach the grueling part of a project, I feel like, well, someone else would have done it. And I think that's what happens with like the 12 Caesars project is you have a lot of artists, they do the 12 Caesars and then they give up. So there's a lot of depictions of Julius Caesar and the first 11 emperors.
And you've started a project with no prior knowledge of Roman emperors, right? You've come into this with no information about it. Do you now find yourself just full of information about these 54 people?
I'd say I'm more and more. I think people confuse me as an expert on the subject. I guess I have to have like a pretty good knowledge of like, oh yeah, I know where that bust is, what museum which bust is in. But I guess that's a bit of a like fairly superficial knowledge about them. Like I'm constantly surprised when I learn any fact about them. I mean, yeah, I could tell you maybe, one thing about each, but there's whole narrative arcs. There's whole, I'm definitely learning more. People share a podcast with me on a certain emperor. I'll watch it, feel like, oh, cool. So I sort of get this sort of like, get what historians are all obsessing over that. I mean, yeah, it really is. The more you look into it, the more you find these like stories that are relevant to contemporary life. Or like, holy smokes, like we have, an American president who might think they're an emperor or something, and like has all the like mental tics of an emperor that would send the citizenry into a coliseum to get who knows what. It's, I think, because I was trying to keep one thing that the software that I use does very well is sort of bring everything into like back to like a neutral face, like puts the mouth back to where an average mouth would be, eyes back to where an average eyes would be. And so I was constantly working between the software and Photoshop to sort of bring back, a certain smirk or a certain like furrow of the brow that was sculpted, in marble, that you can't achieve a lot of the emotion that are in the sculptures in the software. You can sort of trick it, but it's sort of like it always kind of wants to push back into like a very like average face. Hard to describe. It's worth trying. Like it's worth trying, like finding like a good clear photo of a bust and just trying it, throwing it in. It'll come in with errors. Their eyes will be all messed up. But if you mess around with the sliders, you'll sort of get a sense of what's needed to convert one.
It's pretty cool. And I saw a note, I think it was on one of your articles, that said the idea of resurrecting these emperors in the 21st century. Did you think about that idea whilst you were working on these, or were you just thinking, I'm just going to see how they look, see how it goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of like news articles have used the word like resurrection, and I'm always very much like, okay, calm down. This is like I know some of the busts might not even be right, and so the idea that I'm like, well, maybe I like resurrected some random senator, or like I resurrected what the emperor's brother might look like, or I'm try to be pretty modest about like if you use this as like a guidebook to the past, and this is all you had to go off of, you would end up in the wrong century. Instead of finding Augustus, you might end up in like the Kremlin, next to Vladimir Putin. You want to use like more than just what I've done to guide yourself through history.
But with artistic renderings of any kind, there's always this tendency for people, especially scholars, to jump on this thing and say, like, this is what it is. Because the historical narrative, I mean, human beings have a natural tendency or need to have a cohesive story. And so they see something like your work and they say, like, oh, that fits my narrative, or it doesn't fit my narrative. And so it's either accepted or rejected. And this is unfortunate, because I think the history is actually much more malleable. It's much more fluid. And as new information comes to light, different things are interpreted in different ways. But people tend to stick to the narrative that they're used to, because humans, by and large, hate change. And I can really understand how people would be like, criticizing what you've done, saying like, oh, well, that can't be what Augustus looked like. Caligula didn't look like that.
Or what's interesting is I've had people sort of like really get attached to a previous depiction that I had, where like I've sort of like mentally moved on. I'm like, yeah, it's Nero. Actually, I think he looks more like this. I think everyone liked my first version of Nero, where he's got this like square jaw and he looked like a rugby player. And I was like, that was he had sort of these sideburns, and what happened is the software read his like sculpted marble sideburns as a jaw. I think maybe he had a bit more weight and had less of a chin, less of a jaw, but I just got someone contacted me. They want to use the previous Nero in a book. I was like, okay. I'm not trying to hide any of the previous ones. I think one of the worst things I could have done is like said, this is version 2, and scrubbed from my website like all the previous versions. And
right.
Said, no, they're wrong. But I left them in, and then I always said like why I made the change. And I think that's been taken really well. I think that was like
brilliant. That's brilliant. That's the thing with the fluidity of history, the fluidity of interpretation. So he could have looked like this, or he could have looked like that. Either way.
Yeah, and people can take my depictions and they can sort of like run with that, or they like, or I mean, it's like it is a project. I called it the Roman Emperor Project. If someone sends me an email and they say you are wrong, you're wrong because of this reason. Here's a historical text. I'm reading that email and I'm going, you know what, you're right. I think I have to like come out with version 2.2. And so it's cool. So hopefully, if there's, I don't know how often we come across new texts from history. I gather it's quite rare. I don't know if it's you have to like dig up a new city that's buried or something, or
Basically,
find a new find a new tablet or a new
right.
But if there's new information, hopefully I'll get an email and someone just screaming at me and saying you're wrong.
With like the textual sources you were using, did you look at multiple different translations of a single text to make sure that the depictions were the same? Because I know that translations can definitely be up to the translator's interpretation of words and phrases and stuff like that. Did you think about that at all whilst you were working on it?
I definitely thought about it, but it was definitely a huge pitfall. It was, I could see when people were doing translations that there was sort of, I think one of the big words was like subflavum, and like people's different interpretations of what that meant in terms of like skin tone or hair color.
Right.
And, I don't know. I only speak English. I could only rely on certain translations, and I fell into actually using the wrong translations on my first version. I think there were 3 emperors where someone had translated their hair as blonde, but it was like that site was completely unreliable.
That's interesting, because when I first reached out to Josh about potentially doing this interview with you, you said that one of them looked like someone you went to uni with.
Yeah, absolutely right. Actually, Caligula actually reminded me of a guy who then became an efficiency expert. And I thought, oh yes, an efficiency expert. That would be Caligula, in an ironic sense, but it could happen in some universe, right?
Yeah, there was a professor who reached out to me and they said that they looked like Numerian. And so he sent me a photo from like the same lighting and angle that I had originally rendered him, and it's like definitely looks like brother cousin area. And I was like, can I use your image in the next version? And so just almost for kicks, I was able to like enhance that portrait by mixing in, because you can get more like detail about skin tone and like sort of realism when you add a real image into it, but it's hard to find a good match. But it was like perfect, and I was like, can I include it? Yep. So in the second version there's a professor mixed into Numerian.
I think that's one of those most fantastic things about it, is what you're saying is that people are saying, oh yeah, this is my neighbor, this is the garbage man, this is this guy that like stole money. It's like, people think of the ancient past as completely different from today. These people had nothing to do with us. They were all so primitive, they did these crazy things. There was no difference between us and them. I mean, it's the level of technology is the only thing that separates us. But as far as the essential humanness, human condition hasn't changed at all. And I think that's one of the things that impressed me the most about your work is like, yeah, these people are very recognizable. I mean, they do look like your garbage man, your neighbor, and your brother, and your cousin,
I was going to say, Josh, you're the one who found the original article, and you're the one who emailed it to us. Where did that come from? Where did you stumble on that?
Yeah, I came across it on MSNBC, and it was brilliant. And they had a link to your images, Daniel. And then when I saw the images, that was the whole thing. Where then I wrote to Kelly, I couldn't stop looking at them for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour perhaps. Yeah, I know that guy. Oh yeah, that guy's a used car salesman. Oh, it looks just like the guy I always imagine. Next thing in the sack. Oh, that look of surprise. So, I instantly wrote Jan van der Krabben, our CEO at AHE, and Kelly, and said, maybe we should look into this as something that we should explore, because it was just something that it just seemed like so exciting. Like, I should say, like, I found it like so incredibly exciting. It was just instantly I wanted to share it with everybody that I knew. I wanted to say, like, mass email all the way across. It was just, your work was really, really, it is really, really impressive. It's like, it was great.
And I got to say that shout out to your website. Came across it multiple times in my research, and it was always good to have like a reliable source and like proper citations to Roman Emperor faces. It was great.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for joining this. This was awesome. Really great.
Yeah. I'm glad it worked out so well. Thank you so much for joining us. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much to both Josh and Daniel for joining me today and chatting all about Roman emperors and Daniel's reconstruction. If you're interested in his work, I have linked his website down below, and if you'd like to purchase prints of the Roman emperors, I have popped the Etsy link down below. This video was brought to you by Ancient History Encyclopedia. For more great articles and interactive content, head to our website via the link below. Ancient History Encyclopedia is a not-for-profit organisation. If you'd like to support our work, hit the card up in the screen or via the link below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.